turn your phones off. We're silent phone. Make sure you sign in. Notice is hereby given that a special council meeting of the town of Laguna Vista, Texas will be held Tuesday, the 5th day of March, 2019 at 6 o'clock p.m. in the City Hall building at 122 Fernandez Street, Laguna Vista, Texas. Call to order at 6 o'clock. We'll have the invocation led by Reverend Dr. Claudia Nauer.
The Lord be with you. Lord God, send upon your people this evening who are gathered at this meeting a spirit of wisdom and of justice and of charity. I pray that you would give them steadfast perseverance in their service to their community, that the discussions that are held and the decisions that are made are done for the benefit of your people and for your glory. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
With allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge this flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one indivisible.
I'd like to wish everybody a blessed Lenten season also.
There's Susan Houston. Here. Councilmembers Michael Carter.
Here.
Javon Howard.
Here.
Frank Davalos.
Here.
Rolando Gonzalez.
Here.
Victor Worrell.
Here.
And Nadine Smith. Here.
Item 4, at this time, audience is allowed 5 minutes per person to address the council on any topic. There's no discussion or formal action taken during this agenda item. The speaker must identify themselves before speaking. A speaker request form must be presented to the city secretary prior to the meeting. And first, we have Jordan.
Good evening, I'm Bill Beatty at 14 Lakewood, and I've come to present a friend of mine who's offering a service to the town. But first, I'd like to sneak something in. I was delighted, I haven't been to the meeting for a while, but I was delighted when I went to say goodbye to Officer Lerma a couple of months ago that he was staying. And that's a good thing for the town. It reflects very well in the town, as did, and then I remember that the chief was going to leave some time ago, and he stayed too. So among the good things that I was thinking about, I was also thinking about the fact that the town provides entertainment for children and families, athletic activities. There's a bumper sticker somewhere out there that says, Zumba changed my life. I'm trying to get that bumper sticker because that's a big part of my life too. That's a very good thing. And very, very dear to my heart is the fact that the town takes in stray animals and nuisance animals, and they set apart a place for nature over the walking trail. I spend a lot of time over there, do some volunteer work over there. And the reason I'm here today to talk about that is because a friend and colleague of mine, Kristen Howard, who's the manager of the South Padre Island Birding and Nature Center and a resident of Laguna Vista, has a few words to say.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Kristen Howard, and as Bill said, I am the manager, marketing director of the South Padre Island Birding and Nature Center. I've been there for 5.5 years. Bill came to me, talking to me about the nature trail, and right away I was like, hey, can we just go over there and we'll bring our staff, we'll spend a few hours, take some plants, and we'll enhance what we need to do. So Bill, of course, does all the right steps, calls everyone. I believe made a few phone calls to the city manager and to Susie, and wanted us to make that announcement. The reason why, without hesitation, even listening to him, is that, I am a resident here, I am the Birding Center manager, but also it's a way to partner with our sister city And I just wanted to give back to the community because a lot of members in this town come and volunteer for us. And I just feel it's the right thing to do. And I'm just so very blessed that we have so many people that use that trail and come volunteer and help me out with my job. So it was like the right thing to do. So I'm really happy. We're gonna set a date eventually soon, hopefully when it
After
warms up.
spring break.
Yeah, we're after spring break, and I'm sure we'll be taking pictures and maybe come back and do another public comment or something. So I'm really excited, and it is very dear and near to my heart, along with a lot of members of this community that go to Burning Center and use that trail. So thank you all very much. Thank you for all that you do. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Benito Ochoa the Fourth.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Benito Ochoa IV. I am here today to formally introduce myself as your Justice of the Peace. I'd like to start off by saying it's an honor to be in this position. I grew up in this area and I've seen it grow. I'm very, very proud and excited to see what the future holds for Laguna Vista. I've seen this place grow as well. So at the same time, I know most of you know who my father is, and I'm here today because I want you to know who I am. It's something that's very special to me to serve you guys, and I just want to let you guys know that I'm here. If there's anything I can do for the city of Laguna Vista, my doors are open, okay? And to conclude everything, I just want to thank y'all for having me. Thank you. I don't think I've met you. Daniel Ochoa the Fourth. I'm here in the car. I think most of you guys. Oh, yes. Oh, one more thing. We have a golf tournament. I am also the president of, I wasn't gonna bring it up, but thank you. We have a golf tournament coming up for the athletic club, which is a Tarpon Athletic Booster Club. It's gonna be for the kids, and it's March 30th. It's here at the South Padre Island Golf Course. I do have flyers that I can leave with you guys, just in case, and there's sponsorships. There's even $100, which is the lowest sponsorship, but with that $100, we can put the city of Laguna Vista to sponsor a hole. I'll leave that with you guys here, whatever y'all wanna do with it, it's y'all's. And we are gonna need looking for volunteers on that day to help work the golf course. I'm working with Coach Strunk, who is our new head coach and athletic director. So we hope to make it an annual thing. This is our first one, so we'll do the best we can. Thank you.
Good job, Will.
Okay, item 5. A, consideration action to approve the minutes from the February 12th, 2019 regular meeting.
And I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the
Motion on the floor made by Councilman Davalos, seconded by Councilman Gonzalez, to approve the minutes from February 12th, 2019 regular meeting.
Mayor Houston,
Yes.
Councilmember Carter,
Yes.
Councilmember Howard,
Yes.
Councilmember Davalos,
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez,
Yes.
Councilmember Warren,
Okay.
and Councilmember Smith.
Item B, this is second reading, to approve the second reading of ordinance number 2019-03, repealing ordinance number 2007-81, regulating the collection and disposal of garbage, yard trash, and other waste within the limits of the town of Laguna Vista, providing requirements for customers and requiring containers for the disposal of garbage, requiring disposal of waste, and so on. Rolando?
Council, this is the second reading of an ordinance that deals, I sent you an email, it deals specifically with garbage collection, with the brush, the placement of brush in front of the yard. The second ordinance that's following this one deals, is more general, with other nuisances, high weeds and so on and so forth. So, in the current ordinance, there's a 10-day provision. We've actually had people have been cited and say, well, you know, yeah, I put it on the 4th, but there's this, the pile's supposed to be in the 10, so I have 10 days under the ordinance. So basically defeating the purpose of having this 10 to the 15th window. What we've attempted to do is to minimize that to 1 day. Now, some have asked questions, well, why 1 day? In fact, I had a discussion with Mr. Morale yesterday. He said, well, you know, if people put their brush, it seems only appropriate that if they put it, that they should within 24 hours be able to relocate that brush pile, put it back on their property or get rid of it within 24 hours. I understand that 24-hour parameter, it's a policy call. That's the one you make. But I might add, I know in chatting with the chief and in chatting with our code enforcement officer, Christina, by and large, people are very good about complying. When they weren't aware of this 10 to the 15th replace your brush pile, after she had informed them, they remove it and they bring it out during that 10th and the 15th of the month. And I know there's reference to the fine. It says up to $1,000. We don't foresee a first-time offender or violator being assessed $1,000. That's an extreme situation, and that pretty much is a discretion of the judge. So what we're trying to do is establish a certain standard that if somebody puts their brush pile, basically the code enforcement goes over and says, you know, you've got there's so many hours to relocate or remove it from the front of your yard. And as you consider this ordinance, there are some changes that I would like for you to consider as well. And I, you know, Councilman Guerrero was in the office earlier. I know I chatted with Mr. Morale as well. If you look at on that draft ordinance, section F on page 3, there's reference about the container should not be visible from the public rights of way. Well, half of the houses in the community, when they bring back the container, can be seen either on, you know, next to the garage, so it's visible. So what I'm asking is that be struck off. That specific reference to the container should not be visible from the public rights of way. The second one I have is on section 7A on page 5. That first paragraph, asking that from where it says, every person is required to have or to provide garbage collection containers by this ordinance, period. And to strike off, is further required to have said garbage and yard trash removed from their premises by the franchise collection agency. Such person is required to pay the approved fee and charges for the collection services. That be struck off. So it would end on ordinance, and then it would start failure to use the franchise collection agency or failure to pay for solid waste collection shall be constitute a violation of this ordinance and may subject to person penalties for herein. And then on the third one is section A on page 6. The first paragraph where it says, the first sentence, commercial accounts may make such arrangements. It basically should say, commercial accounts shall make such arrangements. And one of the things I'm bringing up also is on section 10, that same page, on which is page 6, the last sentence of section 10, where it says, notice shall be deemed effective upon hand delivery or upon posting as provided above. One of the concerns that was brought up, well, what if that person isn't there? You post a notice and nobody's there. One of the suggestions that was made to include a 48-hour provision. So basically it would be notice shall be deemed effective upon hand delivery or 48 hours after posting as provided above. So you post something there, you basically given them 48 hours from the time it's been posted. So if they're out of town, they'll have that 48-hour window to be compliance.
And the last one is that same section, and then notice the following paragraph, the notice provided under this section, the town, it said may inform, it should be shall inform. I chatted with, our attorney, and he had some ideas about the wording of those sections that I brought up, but those are things that we discussed earlier, and we don't have a problem with those changes. Staff doesn't have a problem.
Mr. Carter?
I would like to see it be like 9th to the 15th or 10th to the 16th, so it's 7 days. Just because that gives, if you work 40-hour week, 5 days, and you got a kid that's gotta go to something on a Saturday morning or a Saturday, you got another day to do something. Because now it's only 6 days. I think you should have a full week.
Instead of 5-day window. you said.
Well, it's a 6-day window, really. It's 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So if you add a day, at least then the normal person will, they have 2 extra days. You're not normal. What did they say, a 40-hour week guy person? Then you got 2 days to get it done, you know what I mean? It just kind of helps out the person a little bit, you know? When I was looking at the calendar, and sometimes the 10th starts on a Monday and the 15th is on a Saturday. You know, that one extra day would, I think, could help some people, just to comply a little bit better and give them a little bit more options.
So it would be, you're recommending the 10th to the 16th?
Or the 9th to the 15th.
9 to 15.
I don't really care, I mean,
9
it's
to
just,
15.
I just think that one extra day might help
Yeah.
some people out to give, you know, that one extra day of work.
Makes sense. Mr. Douglas?
On section 9, I would like to see, instead of 24 hours, at the discretion of the code enforcer, because she knows which ones are violating more than once. If, you know, if someone's first time violation and she does 72 hours, I think it should be up to her to determine that number. in my opinion.
And I might add, with our code enforcement officer, as you well know her, she's very good in the community. But when she comes back to the office, she has a spreadsheet, and she'll know where she went, the addresses, and she'll post all these notes, and so what you're saying is basically include language where the code enforcement officer is giving it discretion to be able to.
To determine, what time.
That's reasonable too.
Yeah, I like that. Could it be something like 24 to 72 hours as applicable, as
Well,
deemed applicable by?
He said, at the code enforcement
Yeah, so she
discretion.
said 72.
Are you fine with that, Chief? That giving the code enforcement officer that discretion where she can work with the property owner on.
Yeah, yes, because code enforcement's gonna know the situation at the home. If someone's in the hospital and can't do it, okay, I'll give you a week, I'll give you 3 days. That's very reasonable.
Mr. Wong, did you have something, Mr. Wong?
Well, I have a couple things, but, on that note, Mr. Morado, is there a problem with that legally, given
No, because it's not a matter of the violation, it's a matter of the time. If the code enforcement officer had discretion to determine whether or not the violation, that would be more problematic for me. But it's really, how much time can you have? You have 24 to 72 hours. So I think we're okay with that.
well, yeah, since this is now the ordinance that we're talking about, voting on, we should work through this one amendment at a time, because this is what we've got to work with, and everything you talked about, I agree with. We want to talk about we want to make an amendment that it's the 9th through the 15th, and we want to make an amendment for the
Just make that a
discretion,
motion, just whoever makes the motion, just add those things.
so we can add all those amendments into one motion to, I would make a motion to, include all those amendments, and well, I mean, I think, I've got most of the ones I was interested in listed, but we need to write them down, make sure they're all right. Mr. Ryder, did you have any problem with any of those?
Of which, the ones that were proposed here?
The ones we posted?
That I brought up and.
That Mr. Mello talked about?
The one that caught my attention section 7A, this is the one we discussed by telephone this afternoon. And the concern was that people might have yard men or whoever who might come in conflict and take the material away. Well, he's not the franchise collection agency for the town, but it still happens when you hire those people for, and it still accomplishes your objective that you don't have trash or brush. So, we thought, Mr. Worrell thought, and I agree, that you could solve that by simply requiring folks to pay for the trash collection services used by the city. And once they do that, they're gonna use it to the extent possible, but it doesn't preclude them, that doesn't put them in violation. If their yard man hauls off a couple of bags of grass clippings or whatever, they're still in compliance, because they're paying for the service. So, if that is of interest to you, my suggestion would be that it be worded this way. Every person required to have or to provide garbage collection containers by this ordinance is required to pay the approved fee and charges for the collection service. The failure to pay for solid waste collection services shall constitute a violation. So that's it, you pay for the service, you're in compliance with the ordinance, even if your yardman is the one that actually hauled it off your property. And then the other one that caught my attention was on commercial counts, fees for waste removal. Well, it's really not a problem. Commercial counts may or shall. I think the may was designed to address a situation where the arrangement that exists might be perfectly acceptable.
Yeah, actually, the shall that I was looking for was on the last.
Number 10, right?
It was on number 10, the second paragraph in number 10, and that was, the shall I wanted to see was in a notice provided under this section, the town shall inform the owner if the owner commits another violation, because we didn't want selective enforcement on whether or not that 12-month period was used.
So based on that, I would recommend that you leave section 8A as may. I think that would still work for you.
Okay, leave A, and I would suggest we leave 8A as may, and the second paragraph in section 10, the may becomes a shall.
Those are the only two that caught my attention.
Do you have wording on what you want? So if we're gonna do this all in one motion, we need to have the wording for what you want. Right.
Giving discretion to the code, up to 48 hours to the code enforcement officer, or 72 hours.
Right.
I have it already, if you want it.
You would say it, yeah.
The notice for non-compliance, section 9, go to the section of, right there where it starts, violation within 24 hours. Violation within 24 to 72 hours at the discretion of the code enforcement officer. From the day of service of notice thereof is provided. And then that accomplishes your objective.
Ms. Smith?
How about or at the discretion? So if she decides, as the chief said, if somebody's in the hospital, she can give him a week.
Right.
So it's 24 hours, 24 to 70 hours, or at the discretion. So if she decides let's do it a week, because sick person is in the hospital for a week, or they're out of town for 10 days. I think that's
Yeah,
what you're thinking as well,
I
right?
want her to determine. I don't want us to say 24 to 48 or 72, it's up to her. If she feels one is 48, one is 24, then that's what I want.
If you could, that's almost total discretion to the code enforcement officer how much time you give. And you may start running into some problems with the county, because there's no criteria by which that's determined. And the problem you run is, you could run into, I'm not saying you will run, but the problem you could run into is allegations that that's not being used, that discretion is not being used evenly.
Even if she has
Because there's no-
spreadsheets and information listed
Because
about
there's
each resident.
Because there's no criteria by which the decision about how much time to give is made. You know, in other words, there's no paradigm, there's no rules by which that she applies to determine how much time to give. So if you give total discretion as to discretion, you could run into a problem. Maybe not, I mean, it's up to the folks out
So
there.
if we worded 24 to 72 with the discretion of the code enforcement, what does that mean? We still give her the option to decide?
Within that window of 24 to 72 hours, she can give
She
up
can
to
only
72.
say 24 or 48 or 72.
Well, 24, 36, or,
You can
know,
extend
up to
the
72.
Yeah.
So 1 to 3 days.
You guys are more than 72?
That's what I'm talking about, is that if you give total discretion, you could run into a problem of, okay, what's the criteria that used? Someone who doesn't get it could say, well, why was I denied that? So,
But she pulls up her spreadsheet and says, well, you violated this ordinance 4 times and this person violated it once. If she has all the information there listed in her spreadsheet, like Mr. Villa said, I don't see an issue.
again,
If someone challenges this, she pulls up her spreadsheet, this is why. This is what I'm going by. Unless we include that in here.
Again, all I'm saying is if you don't set out the criteria in your ordinance, you're subject to that kind of thing. Now, whether she could defend herself, as you suggested, maybe she could, but that would be the challenge. If somebody were upset with the town about, I didn't get X amount of time, and, you know, I had a sick wife or a sick daughter, whatever, you know, that's where you run into problems. So, if you give total discretion. So, I just point that out.
I see both your points, I agree with this one, I think there's a good, because there's gonna always be somebody, well, she got 4 weeks and I only got 2 days and that's unfair. So, but also see what you're saying, so maybe if we make the time longer, you know, just for criteria, like how about 24 to 5 days, or how about that? Would that work? I think I see what Mr. Walker is saying, because there's always gonna be somebody saying, despite the spreadsheets, despite the, you know, before or something, so make them say, well, this dude got 2 weeks, why am I only getting, just to, that's unfortunately how we work sometimes. So, what about 5 days? What do you think?
Okay.
She's not finished. He's next, and then him.
Okay.
That's just a suggestion.
Yeah, and the other reason I brought up those days is because I kind of agree with you in the sense that you're giving people that are reading the ordinance a target period. And I think you can extend it probably, and it's still gonna be her discretion. It doesn't have to be 72 hours, just a random number.
Mr. Carter?
I just think I'm gonna protect the officer. And by protecting, and by putting it, making this fall on us instead of falling on her, we give her that protection, because she's the one dealing with everybody, you know what I mean? And so, I just think we need to protect the officer, that's my only opinion.
So if we keep the window, but then, so if we bring it back to us to make the decision, we just say any special situations? No, nothing.
No, you make the decision right now in terms of how
Oh,
much
just
time.
keep the window.
When you, and I'm not trying to speak for Mr. Carter, but if your ordinance says she can grant 24 to 72 hours, that's it.
Right.
So she is protected from, well, I can give you 3 days, you know.
Yeah, because we're telling her,
Yes, exactly,
this is what you can do.
you're protecting her from herself, you know?
Yeah, no,
it's-
that's understood, yeah,
it'd be the-
but so what if there's a special situation then?
Well, then that person goes to the court and says, look, the reason I couldn't
Okay.
comply was because I had this horrible situation. You know, I mean, but that's going to be the exception, should be the exception rather than the norm. You know, so. You know, let me, to give you some peace of mind, you currently have a anti-loose dogs ordinance, I'm not saying that right, but you have an ordinance that prohibits dogs from running wild in your community, right? If somebody has a dog, if somebody has a dog that's getting loose, they're cited, right? They're cited. And they have to come before your municipal court. And what's the first thing we do is, okay, what's going on? Why is your dog getting loose? Well, we had a hole in the fence. Have you fixed it? Yes. Okay, well, then if you fixed it, we're inclined to let it go. Please don't do it again. What may happen is you have the same dog getting loose a lot. So now you have the same defendant coming before the court. Now in the second or third citation, the dog's still running loose. What's the problem? Well, I have a hole in the fence. Well, you told me you'd fix that. So now what's the problem? And so we use that escalation, at least we try to, to just get compliance. We're not trying to fine the people, but if they don't comply, eventually we start fining to get compliance. So it's not that we're trying to, the first time, well, it's $1,000 to your dog. No. You told me, the dog got loose or the gate got left open accidentally and, it won't happen again. Okay, I'll trust you. Let's hope it doesn't. I hope I never see you again here. But if I do, you're gonna have to explain why the dog got loose again. Same thing with your trash. If somebody says, well, I had to go through waste, that's a special situation. My wife was ill, I could get to it. I didn't come down to the first one, that did not. On the other hand, if that same person keeps coming up with municipal court, putting trash out there when they shouldn't be doing it, that's what you're getting teeth to here. So that's how the court system then works to apply the laws so that they make sense, given what your objective is, which is to try to keep the community clean. So keep that in mind, please.
Further discussion? Any motion, Mr. Wall?
So are you,
I'm okay with the way you said it.
the way he said it, 24 to 72 at the officer's discretion, and the motion would be to approve
The ordinance is
the ordinance as amended, 2019-03 as amended.
Including what?
Including the amendments that we talked about, that you brought up, and the one change, we're not gonna amend the may on top.
8A.
8A, but we are gonna amend the may will become shall in the second paragraph of section 10. And then Frank's amendment, and the 9th to the 15th. So that would be my motion.
I'll second.
You have it on? Not sure I do, but that's okay, I get it. Motion on the floor made by Councilman Moore, seconded by Councilman Davalos, which was 2019-03.
Mayor Houston?
Yes.
Councilmember Carter?
Yes.
Councilmember Howard?
Yes.
Councilmember Davalos?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Worrell?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Motion passes. Item C, this is also second reading to approve the second reading of ordinance number 2019-04, repealing ordinance number 2015-19 and establishing new nuisance abatement procedures for property maintenance, repealing any ordinances in conflict with this ordinance and providing penalties for violation of its provisions. Rolando.
This is the second reading of the ordinance. This is a vague one that applies to other violations on the property. And I think what happened is we were working on these two ordinances. The ordinances were overlapping, and I believe what we attempted to do is remove garbage collection from this ordinance and have it specifically in one ordinance, and then deal with everything else on this ordinance. And on the current ordinance, there's reference to 7 days. And that's where people would come over and say, I have 7 days to, the brush pile, I have 7 days. So I put it on the 5th, and it's on the 10th, so I have 7 days to, and that's one of the concerns the code enforcement officer brought to our attention. Here it's reduced to 1 day, but there's reference, because it's dealing with nuisances on the property, and not with garbage collection or the brush piles. There's a provision that says that the code enforcement officer, if hardship is established, can grant an extension of up to 5 days. There's reference on this ordinance. Now, there's a couple of changes. Council member came over and we went over. And if you can look at section 3 on page 2 on the top, there's reference about stagnant water. Councilmember Worrell brought up the idea, well, what if there's stagnant water in the whole ditch? I mean, how can I be held responsible if that problem is beyond my control, that it's a town problem? So I would suggest to address that, and I know we had discussions with the attorney about this, that there be reference to something to the effect that, and he brought it up, with the exception of town controlled drainage within the right of way, it shall be unlawful for any person who shall own, control, or occupy any lot, grounds, yard, or any other place in the town to 1, 2, 3. So I would ask that we consider including reference to the town controlling or maintaining those drainage ditches. And there's reference on page 6, on section 6, underneath there, the same page. Councilmember Worrell brought up the idea about, that if brush is placed illegally, or somebody goes to somebody's house in the middle of the night and they go dump 15 tires, and that property owner is gonna be cited for those tires that somebody illegally dumped on their property, that if it's an elderly person, for example, and that you're citing this person who was not responsible for the placement of those tires, that there be something to the effect that if a police report is filed, for that illegal dumping, then that property owner would basically be, for lack of proper terminology, absolved or excused, or, so, Rick, I mean, the wording of that, I mean, the suggestion was where it says on the third sentence, other such matter, and then insert, unless a police report has been filed for illegal dumping. Insert that statement. And that's all I have on that particular ordinance.
Mr. Wall?
Yeah, that was my thought. I believe I've already heard about a case where garbage was illegally dumped in an alley, and then the resident was responsible for removing it, and it's not theirs. And I just felt like if somebody was willing to file a police report, if there was illegal dumping in their alley, then they probably didn't put it there. And that they shouldn't be responsible for cleaning up, you know, a mess that was dumped illegally in their alley. That was that. And I also had a couple of other things on this one. It's the same, section 8D. It's the same may to shall as in the last one. It would be section 8, paragraph D. The may should become a shall in my opinion. And then section 8C, I would want to insert 48 hours after between the word or and posting C. Notice shall be deemed effective upon hand delivery for 48 hours after posting it. It's the same effect as in the last one. And that's all I got.
Mr. Carter?
About the illegal dumping.
Right.
Do you think that there's possible abuse there that could take place? By dumping your own stuff in the alley and calling the police?
I feel like there is, that's probably a more grievous violation of the law than leaving the stuff there. So if they're willing to go, I think you've got an angle for prosecution for filing a false police report at that point. And if someone was willing to put themselves in that position, they probably didn't do it, was my feeling.
We have a lot of dumping at the golf course, so, at the back end of it, so I'm just curious.
Mhm.
Your opinion on it, so.
You should catch the people that are doing it.
Well, it's tough, but believe me, we're trying.
Trail cams.
I'm just curious.
But yeah, that would, my concern was that somebody, you know, could be taken advantage of, you know, especially an elderly person with a bunch of junk dumped in their alley, all of a sudden they're liable to clean it up, and they didn't do it. And really the best thing that I could think of to keep abuse would be to force them to file a police report, which I think would be a violation. Am I correct?
I'm just being devil's advocate.
Sure.
more than anything else, so.
I think it's important to keep in mind though, that if somebody dumps trash on your property, it's still your problem.
Oh,
You take it-
yeah, it is.
You're gonna have to
Trust
clean it
me,
up.
I know.
And if you don't, then you're allowing a nuisance to be created. Or to exist, even though it was not initially your own creation. If you don't clean it up, eventually you're kind of contributing to the problem. I mean, I can't tell you in my place the number of beer cans in front of the property, and tires. I get a nice set of tires every now and then. You know, and I have to clean it up. So, you know, but these are policy decisions that you're gonna have to wrestle with, depending on what kind of outcome you want.
And that happens in vacant lots a lot. Like if I live across from you, you on the vacant lot, I trim all my trees, but I don't want the brush in my yard, I go dump it in your vacant lot. And they won't pick it up because you don't have an account. So they're not gonna pick it up from the vacant lot, because the vacant lot owner will come to us and say, well, they piled a bunch of brush there, but it's not mine. And so then he ends up having to haul it off because it wasn't his, but they won't pick it up because he doesn't have an account. So, but that happens in vacant lots a lot, where people just dump stuff there, because they figure it's a vacant lot.
Any further discussion on this? Motion, anything on this?
I would like to come to some conclusion about how we handle it. I don't think it's fair that people, are responsible for the illegal activity of other people. So if there's something that we could do to remedy that, I'd like to. I don't know what the remedy is if it's not this. So,
I think that's a good idea. I would venture to say every other town has dealt with this problem and no one's come up with a solution. But your suggestion is, I think, the best.
hadn't filed a police report, at which point. And I mean, and I've been going under the assumption that if, that we have somebody that would be able to go and take care of it if that was the problem. I mean, if it was an illegal dumping situation, do we not have somebody that would go get rid of it? We don't have proof here?
I mean, public works would.
We have 2.5 people.
This isn't something that happens, it's not something that happens weekly around here.
But it does.
You think?
As I sit at the golf course a lot, like Mr. Carter.
That was what I was getting at, was who at the end of the day is gonna be responsible to pick it up? You know,
We won't have to pick it up.
that's, well, see, I don't think that's a good option either, because I can give you trailer loads. Okay?
Thank you.
I'm just saying that you really gotta think about what the real remedy is, because who's responsible? You know, I mean, at the end of the day, sure, it's, the person might not get fined, but it's still their responsibility to clean it up. Well, it's somebody's responsibility. I mean, it's not good either way, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, it still has to get picked up.
I don't think you want to create, by this ordinance or any other ordinance, a legal obligation on the part of the town.
I don't either.
Because you're fighting, then you're creating an issue for yourself, which you don't have to deal right now, and it will be an issue.
Yes, it will.
It is the private property owner's responsibility to clean and maintain their own property. Just the same way as if you're involved in a car accident and you get hit by an uninsured driver, nobody's gonna fix your car but yourself. Even though the other party is totally responsible, it's your, in the end, it falls to you. And I think you're in the same situation. This is actually a little bit different from the notice provision, whether or not you get fined. But creating an obligation on the part of the town to actually have to go and clean it up, that's a different matter. I'm not sure we want to go there.
But I agree that they should be absolved of any fines. If that was the case, then they'll still have to clean it up.
Without the motivation of a fine, what's gonna make them clean it up?
Well, because then they'll have the 9 to the 15th, and if it just sits there, you know what I mean? eventually it'll have to get cleaned up, I mean, it's,
Right, yeah,
it is
yeah,
what it is.
and I understand that, and that's,
Because what's gonna happen also, the next door neighbors are gonna call and say, that pile, the rats from that, and cockroaches from that pile are coming to my property, and is the city gonna enforce the ordinance and have that person clean up the pile? And those things happen.
Mr. Gonzalez? David? It'll come back.
Trash, it's trash.
Mayor, may I say something?
Sure.
Again, I just want to remind you, I mean, I worked in your municipal court and I've had ordinance violations for other ordinances you have passed. And again, the whole idea that we try to implement with your municipal judge is compliance. All we're trying to do is get the people to comply with the ordinance. We're not really interested in hitting their wallet. If they comply, I'm a happy man. I hope I don't see you again here. Good luck to you. And so, I'm suggesting that you might, rather than try to tweak the ordinance and try to cover all these bases, just see how it works. And if it becomes a problem, you can always bring the ordinance back and amend it if people complain to you, hey, you know, some kids or whoever came by last night and dumped a load of garbage and I got fined $1,000 a week later for that. What's up with that? And that would have been a failure under those circumstances, because I assume that had the person been cited, when a person's cited, the judge always sends them to me initially for an initial pre-trial conference, just to find out what happened. And so that's usually their opportunity to tell me, this is what happened. We were gone on vacation, we come back and we find a bunch of garbage in front of our property, you know. So, and it's never been an incident before. Those are the kinds of things that we take into consideration. So I'm suggesting that maybe that flexibility just within the court system in and of itself might solve some of the concerns that we had about kind of strict enforcement.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Yeah, what I was thinking earlier is that it falls back again to the discretion of the court, like it was with the previous one. So, yeah, that's where I was at and lost it.
And you're prosecuting.
And then when I heard you, I was like, yeah, okay.
for one other thing, just at the very, oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Right in the beginning, under definitions, brush means and shall include all trees or shrubbery in height, and I think we left out a measurement there. So,
Which,
the section 1 definitions, second paragraph, brush means and shall include all trees or shrubbery in height. Supposed to be a measurement in there.
there should be a measurement there, yeah, you're right.
So there's that. What's the measurement?
8 inches.
8 inches.
8 inches.
Brush includes trees and shrubbery, 8 inches in height?
Brush is
8
not
inches,
8
8 inches is the grass height. 8 inches is the grass height.
Well, 8 inches is anything above that is use, is that what it's talking?
What we could do, I'll have to look back at the old ordinance to see if it was in there, I don't remember.
Just take it out.
Like 8 feet.
Brush means and shall include all trees or shrubbery which are not
That's the
cultivated
same
or cared for.
definition
So
as
just
the current
scratch,
one.
just scratch in height.
No,
Yeah, that's,
That works.
that's for grass.
Which are not cultivated or cared for, so yeah, just scratch. So, do you wanna do all the amendments in the motion at the
Yes.
same time again? So I'd make a motion to approve this, removing in height. Adding, with the exception of town control drains within the right of way at the beginning of section 3. Inserting 48 hours after between or and posting, section 8, paragraph C, and striking may and inserting shall in section 8D.
Is he writing?
I'm sorry.
I was trying to get his notes.
I'm just thinking about like the town controlled drainage, right? Okay, like, when I used to live over on Ebony, for instance, my neighbors, they had a truck drive into their driveway and it collapsed the
Pipe,
pipe there, right?
culvert, yeah.
and they never fixed it. And so, when it would back up all the way to the, but Edith's house is already low, right? And so it would flood all the way back there really quick. So who's responsible for that kind of situation? Because I know it happens more often than people want to admit, you know,
If the
that kind
culvert
of
is
stuff.
collapsing, I would say-
Or clogged up, okay, I mean, there's balls that get stuck in there and, you know, all sorts of stuff.
well, ultimately, the responsibility of the property owner to make sure that there's movement under in the culvert. But what we do is, we'll go over and we'll start, you know, trying to clean up the culverts, where we know the areas where there's possibly of standing water. The public works crews will go over to those areas, start clearing up, make sure there's no obstructions in those culverts. But ultimately,
Just another situation where is it the homeowner's responsibility to fix the culvert under their
Yes,
driveway, or is
absolutely.
it the city's responsibility?
it's
I mean, it's
homeowners.
just another
To the easement.
part of the question.
Well, then maybe but my particular situation, the culvert under my driveway is fine. I'm in the middle of the block, my neighbors on both sides are higher than me. And if I was gonna fix the drainage in my yard, I would have to trench the right-of-way 200 feet
Yeah.
down the side of one neighbor's house and 150 feet down the other neighbor's house. Otherwise, I have standing water in my ditch
Yeah.
for a week after any substantial rain. And it's because literally the ditch rises from my house both directions. You
Yeah.
know, it's not my place to get out a backhoe and start trenching the right away in my neighbor's yard.
No, I agree with you.
You know, so that was one of my concerns.
Yours is not the only yard like that.
Yeah, I know, yeah, but mine definitely is, and it's a good example of what I was going after. You know, so that was my concern, is there something you would wanna add about culverts or construction, or, I mean, it's.
I don't know, I just know my experience
Yeah.
and what's happened in the past, and knowing that people's culverts get clogged up, and then it backs everybody else up, and
Right.
whose responsibility is that? Is it the town's responsibility? I don't know if we want that or not.
Well, I would agree that the culvert, any kind of construction that's done at your house is your responsibility, but this particular
Or
paragraph
maintenance
was
of your
talking
culvert.
about,
Or we maintain.
was talking about ditches and low spots in the yard, and
Let me ask a question. What is the problem you're trying to address? Do you have a standing water problem in this community, which has been an issue? And so is it as a result of holes in the ground, or is it a result of plastic swimming pools in the backyard? Or is it the result of,
It's a result of drainage.
Yeah.
Drainage. well, if it's an overall drainage problem, you're not gonna solve it with this ordinance.
Okay, that's.
Yeah, I mean, if it's an overall drainage problem, then you need the drainage system that works, and, I think Mr. Worrell is pointing out to a perfect example.
No,
of the problem.
exactly, and that's more than his house, there's a lot of them around, so.
And so, if you have those situations where you have the drainage ditch itself is at various elevations and you have low spots, you're gonna have standing water.
Yeah.
It's the nature of the beast.
You are.
Where we live, everything
And it'll be city
comes this
property
way.
that's there.
Almost.
I was just gonna say, we actually have an ordinance that addresses drainage and culverts. I don't know what it says, but we do that.
I'm gonna suggest, given Alma's announcement, that you table this item, let us read that ordinance and see if we can make better sense of what you're trying to accomplish, see if we can make it work a little better without having to address it again. We'll bring it back to you at the next meeting.
cool, that works for me.
Yeah.
Motion to table now.
Second?
Yes, I made the motion to table. And you seconded it? Okay. Motion on the floor to table. Item C, ordinance number 2019-04 is made by the mayor and seconded by Councilman Wall.
Mayor Houston?
Yes.
Councilmember Carter?
Yes.
Councilmember Howard?
Yes.
Councilmember Davalos?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Worrell?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
That motion passes. Item D, this is first reading to consider ordinance number 2019-05, creating overlay districts for FM 510 and Highway 100. Rolando?
At the last council meeting, there was a request to come up with some type of overlay district for farm and market for 510. And an overlay district, you can be aware of, this is common among other municipalities where you impose an overlay on certain areas. When you impose an overlay, you include certain standards that you'd like to see within that overlay district. I was working on that for Highway 100. So what I attempted to do with this first reading is have an ordinance that includes the overlay district for 100 to establish this corridor whereby any development 300 feet, within 300 feet from either side of the state right-of-way will have to comply with certain landscaping, certain lighting, certain signage from one side of the town limits to the other side to, in a way to complement, to establish a certain theme that when you're driving through 100, oh my God, there's a certain lighting, certain landscaping, signage. That's included in this ordinance. Council members Howard and Smith had brought up the idea, why don't we create a particular district on 510? And so this ordinance that you have includes those two districts. And so what we attempted to do is create a certain district, the ordinance has two districts on, let me go into, since I already talked about 100, let me go into 510. What we attempted to do is to draw from this envisioning report that was adopted by the council in 2010 about what you envision the community to be in Laguna Vista, the middle part of town, that basically the council, along with the CBC and through hearings and meetings that were conducted, felt that you wanted this small town feel in the community, at the same time incorporating the Spanish colonial features, architectural features on your main street. And incidentally, I included that envision report in your packet. The ordinance you have in front of you, it's a starting point. So essentially what we try doing, when you start talking about certain features on this overlay district on 510, you start going into, what color is the schematic, what colors do you want? What kind of building style do you want? What type of signage do you want? What type of landscaping do you want? So what I attempted to do, and I had been in conversation with Councilmember Smith and Howard about this, with this ordinance, what I essentially attempted to do is give you a description of the forest. Before I bring to you the second reading, I have to describe some of those branches, so to speak. I have to give you detail on signage, detail on color of building, detail on architectural style. If indeed the Spanish colonial style is something that you want to continue, mindful of the idea, and this is a discussion I had with the architect John Percy. He said, Orlando, we can spend 2 months crafting the ordinance. And so one of the suggestions that Mr. Morales gave me last week, he said, why didn't you include a copy of Fredericksburg's overlay district ordinance? And that's the one you have there. Fredericksburg. We can be as detailed in something like that, which would probably involve having to hire an architect to share with us those details and possibly have a couple of public hearings to get input, or we can take a step back and be somewhat vague in some of those standards that you like to see, and get the cooperation of the property owners. And one of the things I chatted with the mayor earlier about, you know, when you start asking people to do things, it's much easier oftentimes when you offer an incentive. You say, hey, we're willing to meet you, we'll give you $1,000 if you repaint your building to this color scheme that we have that represents the Spanish colonial, or if you replace that sign you have with this type of sign that we'd like to see, you know, we're willing to give you, work with you. Because one of the things that Mr. Morrow brought up to me, and I hadn't thought about it, when you deal like with Fredericksburg or some of those other cities, they have these historical buildings that have been in place for years. And the property owners are being asked to make some modifications to restore that historical features of those buildings. Here, what we're doing is we're introducing a set of standards. And like I've already chatted with those commercial buildings that are gonna be coming up, they said they were willing to incorporate some of these features. So basically, I put this on the table, and I'm willing to work whatever areas you want me to work on, go into detail on the colors, styles, landscaping, so on and so forth, and get that for you for the second reading, where you can be more detailed and get an architect to refine some of those areas.
She was ready to go. She's been so good.
Thank you, Mr. Vela, for doing all this. It's a lot of work, and this is gonna be a huge project, you know, it's just not something we should take lightly. You know, this is really gonna predict the look of our city forever. And, I know we're rushing it a tiny little bit so we can have some idea for these 2 new businesses that's coming in soon. And again, we won't force them, they are willing to work with us though. But what I'm asking, this is gonna take time, and we just have a few starting things, and Fredericksburg, which is one I've looked at, not in all this detail. I personally don't think we need such an extensive plan, but I think this is a great example, and what I would kindly ask is if all of us can go and really look into this and see what you think what your vision would be, and what you would think would work for us and wouldn't work for us. And you know, I personally think, I love the Spanish colonial style. I don't quite know if that will work for our city, especially with a very modern looking nature center that's going on. I think we should maybe consider pulling that more a little bit. But anyways, I think we as individuals should go and really look into, you know, like we all do, we do our homework regarding a certain thing, and we should really go and consider, and, you know, let Mr. Vela know what you think so we can work together. I mean, Mr. Morrow, I spoke with him earlier, and he recommended maybe we should have a workshop so we can talk about it and slug out some of these ideas and finalize it. I know this will take time, you know, but I wanna do it right and not just rush it. We wanna get something going, as you understand. This is gonna be a big project, but I think it's important that we get it going. So this is just the first reading. Mr. Ward?
And I do think that with, you know, something of this magnitude is not something that we can address in a city council meeting. We probably should have some sort of a workshop so that we can get all our ideas together in one place at one time without it being, you know, taking a 4-hour city council meeting. So that would be my suggestion, is to see if those of us that are willing to deal with this get together and sit down and see if we can hash out some sort of an ordinance before we bring it to the table at a meeting.
I do want to thank all of the 30 or so people that worked on this envisioning 9 years ago. We spent months working, meeting at the clubhouse, at the golf course, and there were some really good ideas still in here, some of them that maybe we need to revamp, rechange, but I think the people that were on this, I don't even remember, some of them are not even with us anymore. And if this was since. And, but I think they worked really hard, so this, it bears looking at. And I agree with both of you that it's going to take some time, can't just, probably even more workshop. I wanna say we met Saturdays and during the week. Anyway, it's a good document, it's a good, great starting document, it is 9 years old. So,
I'd like to do is, when the workshop is scheduled, I'd like to invite the architect, John Portia, to be here. And where he can, when we start talking about certain features, that he can shed light on that, in those areas, since he's well versed. And help guide us in polishing or refining some areas that we can include in the ordinance. He's receptive to that.
Mr. Gonzalez, then Ms. Smith, and Mr. Carter.
Yeah, I just think probably with somebody with some sort of insight, both architecturally, some sort of brilliance, somebody could drive around and look at this whole area and kind of maybe put together, or like those television shows where you have people that are just really good at looking at what's there, and then looking at the cultural background, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and come up with some good ideas for us to deal with. The only thing is, how much work?
Work with him on that.
Okay.
Ms. Smith.
I was just wanting to say, I agree with you, Mayor. I love this plan. I think it's important to not forget what people have done previously and what they've worked on years ago. You know, it's the same as if we work on something right now, 10 years from now, somebody else just negates it or something. And no, I love this plan. I think it's wonderful. I love the vision that it went to, but it doesn't address overlay district. So we can with, you know, everything here, especially there in the end where it says it's a quality Bayside living, cozy, peaceful, clean. It's an attraction, a quaint town square, winding, walking, green vehicle and bike trails. You know, all of those things is what I absolutely love too, and I think that we all love. But I think we need an overlay district to enforce this, or to
go into more detail.
That's just the next step I think our city is going towards.
Mr. Carter.
I just keep thinking about 510 and how much we have left to build out. There's not a whole lot.
There is more than you think.
No, there's not. There's probably 10 acres at the most on a good day. And Highway 100, I can see that, but and the county's already pretty much gonna decide what's gonna happen there. I mean, well, you know, we're involved, but that's kind of already a set piece, so. To me, it's like, I think it's already there. Not the overlay district, but kind of the design and what's gonna happen is already kind of started. And to fix what's already built is gonna be tough, because it's a hodgepodge.
Exactly.
It just is. And so, how to retroactively fix that, I don't know, and how much money and time do we wanna spend trying to do this when, what's it gonna do? You know, it's gonna be in front of the driving range and in front of the 16 fold and right over here, you know? I mean, that's all that's left. And on 510, Jimmy's lots. And so it's, like I said, I think it's a great idea. I just don't wanna see us spend a lot of time and money on not getting a big bang for it. That's just my only opinion on that.
Now, let me ask you, since this includes 2 overlays, you know, we can schedule, if you want, a workshop for 510, but moving forward on 100, because that's more of a scenic overlay. That's more landscaping, certain lighting, signage, you know. So it only covers 2-3 areas, and that's 300 feet from each side of the right of way. So it's basically establishing this scenic overlay when people are driving, certain lighting, like the Paradise Cove has certain lighting. So a theme that when you drive through here,
Will it have to be contingent on whatever happens with the eco center?
No.
no, this would be for any development on 100, within 300 feet from each side of the right of way. So with, landscaping, signage, and lighting.
Councilwoman Smith?
Thank you, so I'm a little bit like my husband when I want to redecorate my living room. And I see your point, it's very valid, but I think with the little what we do have, I think it's worth trying to make it as nice as possible, you know? And I agree, I don't quite know how we're gonna get with the money. I do know there's a lot of grants, there's a lot of federal money, there's a lot of county. I feel like I've heard of ways you can pay for this. Paint can do a lot of work, just a coat of paint can fix a lot of problems. And then also if we expand more, if we annex more land, we might have more commercial areas, you know, it's for the future of that as well. But I see your point,
Yeah,
but I think it's worth a try. I agree.
No,
Mr. Carter?
I think it's a great idea. I'm not saying it's not a bad idea. I think it's a great idea. I mean, like, not to offend anybody, but the blue building over here. I know that there's somebody that's gonna move in there, a new business.
Good.
What are they gonna, what kind of signage are they gonna put out there now? I mean, it's just, those kind of things. I mean, I agree with you 100%. I just wonder how much effort and time and money do we wanna spend on the little bit of space we have on 510 that's left? And how do we get the people that are already here to change to what we want them to be? I don't know the answers to those things. I just,
Okay, this is the first reading, so, no further discussion. Item E, consideration and action to approve resolution 2019-06, authorizing the submission of a Texas Community Development Block Grant Program application for 2019-20 to the Texas Department of Agriculture. Rhonda?
State requires that a resolution be submitted in which you're authorizing staff to submit for a $275,000 grant for street improvements. And the streets that are listed on this grant, I believe I brought them up a few weeks ago in a previous meeting. Banker Street from Cul-de-sac to Harlem Street, David Cuevo from Cul-de-sac to Beach Boulevard, Fernandez Street from Mesquite Drive to Beach Boulevard, Harlem Street from Mesquite Drive to Santa Isabel Boulevard. One of the streets that was not included was Taylor from Banker to Saunders. And let me explain the situation. And one of the things that we're offering it out, once we get this contract, we're gonna request that it be amended. And the way the state law is now, every specific area you include has to meet that low and moderate threshold of 51%. In the past, you could say, well, 75% of the area is not, but this 25% is 90%, and it makes up for all the other. No, the state requires now that that area did not meet the threshold. However, when we get the contract, we'll request an amendment to it to include that area, to reconstruct that area. And so at this point, what we're asking for is move forward on this resolution, and we're mindful that we're gonna come back after the contract is issued to amend the contract to include that area that was not included, that street from Taylor from Banker to Saunders. Essentially resulting in the whole area with new streets.
Mr. Carter?
do you have any idea what it would cost to pave that section?
We're gonna, in fact, I asked Orlando Cruz earlier for that estimate. So.
Because it needs to be done.
Absolutely, and we will definitely include it. And when you have the equipment and everything, and it's much really include them. We're excited about this grant, very excited.
Well, it needs to be done, just like beach needed to be done. And once these are all finished, every public street in Laguna Vista will be redone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yes, it's huge.
Of course, we don't like to say it, but the values go up, which is good. Property values go up.
Any questions about this one? Not a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2019-06.
Second?
I'll second.
Motion on the floor made by Councilman Davalos and seconded by Councilman Roy to approve resolution number 2019-06.
Mayor Houston?
Yes.
Councilmember Carter?
Yes.
Councilmember Howard?
Yes.
Councilmember Davalos? Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Worrell?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes. Motion passes. Item F, consideration action to approve resolution number 2019-07, authorizing the police chief to submit grant application number 2990605 to the Texas Governor's Office for the local border security program. Chief, Tony?
So when Chief David is not out there, in meetings or with his police officers, he's applying for grants, and the next two items are grants he's applied for, and asking your support to move forward on.
This is Operation Border Star we currently participate in. We report what we do, we collect intelligence in this area, and we report it to the Joint Operations Intelligence Center in Edinburgh. And information gets sent out to all the police departments for intelligence information, with things that they hear might be going on by informants or people who've been arrested. And it enhances patrol. It enhances our patrol. It's for overtime money, boots on the ground. And we participated in now, and we did grade out. We graded because you have to fulfill certain requirements. And calling in on Thursday conference calls, reporting our daily activity, our beards. Or in other words, if we identify an MS-13 member, we report it to Joint as intelligence, and we graded, we're going to speedy graded out as an 8. Pretty sure.
Congratulations.
And while I'm here, I'd like to just reiterate, there's another grant that came, I included the vessel that y'all provided us with, and it, on this grant, is put in for overtime, but they already sent me, I don't know, we might get a little bit more money, $77,000 right now, but they sent all the, I was happy because I know they actually read it now, because I do, I spent a lot of time working on it, and so they might bump it up some and enhance our capabilities, and I want to thank you, and enhance our capabilities on the Stone Garden by quite a bit, with the equipment included. For y'all's decision to do that, because now we're going to be able to get bulletproof vests, thermal imaging, and life jackets. Life jackets, yes. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Good job.
Do you have any questions of Chief of this resolution?
Make a motion to approve 2019-06.
Motion on the floor made by Councilman Ross, seconded by Councilman Smith to approve resolution number 2019-07.
Mayor Houston?
Yes.
Councilmember Carter?
Yes.
Councilmember Howard?
Yes.
Councilmember Davalos?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Worrell?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Motion passes. Consideration and action to approve resolution number 2019-08, authorizing the police chief to submit grant application number 3844901 to the Texas Governor's Office for the 2020 Criminal Justice System.
This grant is requesting $61,500 for body cameras and storage of body cameras. As you know, technology is ever changing, vastly changing, so 4 years ago we got ours, are out to date, batteries are dying, and they don't last. But this is if we're able to get this, we will be the only police department in the valley to have this. And body cameras will be like this. And they'll now be like a phone, and the company puts it in, like takes your uniform, or they'll give you a uniform, which is another plus. And it goes in a clip, a magnet right here, and it's in your uniform. So you don't have to worry about
it falling off, anything like that, so it's really great, and it includes an upgrade, every 5 years or 3 years. They upgrade the device, because as you know, technology is changing. But this is really neat item, because it also is policy driven, meaning that it goes to the CAD unit, when we call this, we get a call. So the CAD unit recognizes the call as whatever your policy is. Like you want a traffic stop, you also, I'm a traffic stop, Texas 100 and FM 510. But the CAD automatically turns the body camera on for me. It takes away human error. Or I forgot to do it, chief, or I was watching this over here and I got excited and it happens and I forgot to turn it on. I mean, it eliminates human error, so, and also it detects gunshots, like within so many feet of the officer. And if an officer is in a struggle and on the prone position, it starts recording. That could be in a struggle, or, one officer's, could have a heart attack and fall down working by themselves at 3 in the morning. It's gonna send an alert to the CAD for us to go check on it. Wherever, or he can't get to the radio, it will send an alert for us to go check on it. But it's policy driven, you can have it turn on at any time. So if we have let's say we have a violent individual who lives somewhere in our community, I can actually get online, it's internet based, I can get online and put a perimeter around that individual's house. So if, let's say Officer Brooks has got a call to that house, but he's not familiar with this individual, and Officer Ledman is, Officer Cruz is, but for some reason, Officer Brooks has never been called to that residence. As soon as the officer breaks that barrier, imaginary one that's been put, it crosses, the camera alerts the officer, violent, whatever the case may be, whatever the case may be. So this is the latest technology, and it does, I'm trying to think of everything it does, it's pretty awesome. Oh, and it also, yes, and it also, this is also included in-car cameras. Because the in-car cameras, the old ones weren't working. So basically, I made a policy and bought cameras and put them in the car, and they're also human error driven. So it will also go off, and also the officer's got to turn them on. And what you have is a little hub, let's say a hotspot per se, that they'll install in a seat, and also does the diagnostics of the car. So let's say, someone says, hey, the officer's speeding. Okay, so you can put a certain road from, or doing whatever, and almost, or let's say he gets in an accident, knock on wood, gets in an accident, and someone says, well, he was speeding. Or you can run through the camera, and diagnostics through the car, and it'll tell you how fast that vehicle is going. So this is the latest upcoming technology. And then we have in-car cameras. It's in conjunction with the cameras we have. While immediately with that little hotspot, let's say something happens over here, I run over here, well, no, anyway, I walk real fast over there. Anyway, we get over there and there's, I run over there and Frank Lemma's units there, he has a hotspot in there, and whatever I see there happens there, what it automatically downloads to the cloud. Automatically, so it eliminates it will eliminate the docking station for the cameras, okay? Where you put it in there and have to pay for that download and pay for that storage, it eliminates that, and it's all in one package. In-car cameras, body camera storage.
And what about the gun? Remember you said?
Oh, yes, and then if the officer pulls his gun, it will, pull it for whatever reason, it starts recording. It starts recording, and and also it records the triggers, the policy-based triggers. It will start recording 2 minutes prior. In other words, something happens, whatever, and also goes like this. Well, it's going to show you what led to that too, because it starts recording 2 minutes prior. And don't ask me how the technology works, but it's pretty good.
Councilwoman Howard had a question.
Thank you, Mayor. How many would you be able to purchase for everybody, or?
Very much.
Okay.
For
Everybody will have
Sounds right.
all the units.
Yes, that's all units, yes.
The chief, you know, he came to me, apparently the vendor was in Laguna Vista, they were here. The chief from Port Isabel was here, and the auditing chief, I think, they spent most of the day going over these products. And the chief was so excited about this, and I told him, I wanna put it on the agenda. If this is gonna be something that automatically will be renewed, we don't have to worry about upgrades. Yeah, $60,000, but it's a wise investment in the community and for the officers. I said, I'm willing to put it on the agenda for the council to consider funding this. And it's so important, for our officers. Then he came back and said, well, Mr. Lee, let me apply for this grant. Let's first try this avenue, and then see what we can do. So that's why this is on the agenda. But I was ready to put it on the agenda because it's something so important.
And also the officers that got used, you know, when flag camps come out, the officers like this. I don't know, I'm doing this, I have to do this, but now they're like, gee, wait, my body camera's not lasting 8 hours, it's only lasting 6. Oh, what do I do? You know, I mean, they want it, you know, and so far, also with this, any complaints, I think the mayor might know this, any complaints that have come, official complaints where people put in writing, the body cameras have exonerated the officers at 100% of the time. Not one official complaint has been sustained. So the officers now are kind of maybe relying on them too much, but anyway, it's a good deal, and it's good for this mission for victims, you know, because when you walk into a residence of a domestic violence, you know, it's like, hey, you don't have to bring them out, take pictures. You get it right there. You get the individual, husband or wife doing it. You get the individual right now still heated, mad. You get the individual hurt, bleeding, all at one time. And it's been very positive that way, and the prosecution of these individuals.
Any further questions? Make a motion to approve resolution number 2019-08. Motion on the floor made by the mayor, seconded by Councilman Smith to approve resolution number 2019-08.
Mayor Houston?
Yes.
Councilmember Carter?
Yes.
Councilmember Howard?
Yes.
Councilmember Davalos?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Warren?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
For everything you do and your officers do.
Thank you.
Item H, consideration and action to approve resolution number 2019-09, designating the Dora Ponciana as the official plant for the town, and I am so excited that you two put this on the agenda. That's such a gorgeous store. I've had two in my backyard. And let me tell you, there was, in McAllen, at our church in McAllen, First Baptist, there were some that were, I don't know, they weren't the dwarfs, they were the Oreos. And there was 2 stories tall, and they were just, oh my gosh, it was something out of a movie. And then something happened, there was a really, really bad freeze back in the 80s. They were just magnificent, and someone had the foresight to plant those, 30, 40 years ago. Thank you. So, Councilman Smith and Howard.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, the city, what reason what got me going on this is the city that I grew up in South Africa, somebody had the foresight, same thing, 60, 70 years ago, to plant what we know here as the jacaranda tree or jacaranda tree. And on all the developing streets and all the newly built streets all through the city. So as time went by, these trees grew up, and they're huge trees, and they're beautiful purple flowers in the spring. And so when you're in my city in the spring, all the streets are lined with these purple giants that just creates this canopy. By now our city is known as the Jacaranda City. People go there just to see it. It's incredible. It's so beautiful. So I was thinking just for myself, what if we can get something like that for our city? Now, we unfortunately live on the ocean, so we're a little bit more limited in what we can use plant-wise because of the salt in our soil, the salt in the air, the temperatures that we have. So I did quite a bit of research. I'm an avid gardener as well, and over the years I've learned what works here and what doesn't. I also, did quite a bunch of research. I've also spoke to Mike Heap. He owns a nursery in Harlingen, and he's very involved in the natural habitat, the native habitat, and all kinds of stuff in our area. And this plant let me just quickly tell you a little bit about this plant. It's very drought resistant, it's salt hardy. It's a zone 9 plant, which means it can even tolerate, we're in zone 10B, so a zone 9 plant will happily live in 10B. They create zones by the temperatures or freezes that plants can live in. So, and even if it dies back from a hard freeze, which we did once every 20 years, it will come back from the root ball. It blooms prolifically almost the whole summer, not just for 1 month or 2. Even if you prune it back a little bit. I thought the bright orange and reddish color that it has is beautiful. It might work with a little tree that we already have on our sign that's orange already. They're very low maintenance. They do well, of course, with more water, And I was just thinking if we plant them at all our signs that we have, like in the front where we come in, the park signs right here. Whenever we do anything, we just throw 2 or 3 of them in there. They love full sun, they love heat. They're truly, I don't know if everybody researched them, they're beautiful plants, beautiful. And I just thought that would be, and Javon agreed with me, and I thought that would be something interesting to consider.
That's why when I talked about that overlay district on 100, we don't have any development there. The scenic overlay, we could include a requirement this plant be planted as part of the landscaping of those new businesses. John Percy, the architect for the South Texas Ecotourism building design, he said, thank you. If the council is adopting that plan, I will incorporate that on the construction of the building on the South Texas Ecotourism, that be included as a plant there. And we can do the same on the retail side of it, and along 100. And I chatted with TxDOT, and they said, give us a landscaping plan. I told the mayor earlier, imagine a medium that has the brick pavers. What if we put the plant there? And, so TxDOT is willing to do, help us work with us, but they want to look at a landscaping plan. And I'm supposed to meet with Scott Pajeski, remember him, he's a landscaping architect. He says, he told me those are some of the most beautiful plants for butterflies and hummingbirds. And he's very familiar with those plants, so. But, it's something we'll work on.
Sorry, I forgot to say that, yes, they're loved by butterflies and hummingbirds, which is part of our butterfly incentive. I almost forgot, I'm sorry to say that, why I didn't pick a big tree. There aren't many big trees that is quite as striking as this plant that will live. You have the Royal Poinciana, they're actually not families at all, which we have here by the bathroom, which is a beautiful tree. A lot of people have them, but they die completely in a freeze. So if we do all this work, we'll lose them eventually, so that's not worth it. Then there's a few other trees, but they just don't have very striking flowers, So I picked a shrub that it gets up to 15 feet tall, but it should get between 8 and 10 feet tall here where we live. And, I think that's all I can remember right now. If anybody has any questions? Any other comments? Questions? You make a motion?
I'll make a motion, or you can make the motion. You will make it, and
I'll make the motion.
You make it.
To approve resolution 2019 to accept the Royal Poinciana as our official plant.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, you want a second? You want to second it?
I'll second.
She wants, we'll let her, she co-sponsored it, so we'll let her second it. It's only fair. Y'all chose a great
I
one.
just want to add a comment
Sure.
here. I saw this and I said, Royal Poinciana, what is that? And then my wife was there and I said, I'm more like, spooky and stuff like that. And my wife saw the flower
Mhm.
and case closed. She said, that's my favorite. Remember you planted one and then you chopped it down or something? I'm like, okay, yeah. So, yeah, no, it was very well researched and everything. That's awesome. I mean, it's a tough area to have things that stay. There's freeze, there's all sorts of.
They're also called the flamboyante too. And it's an apt description. Okay, motion on the floor made by Councilwoman Smith and seconded by Councilwoman Howard, to approve resolution number 2019-09, designating the dwarf poinciana as our official plant.
Mayor Houston,
Yes.
Councilmember Carter,
Yes.
Councilmember Howard,
Yes.
Councilmember Dominic,
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez,
Yes.
Councilmember Warren,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Item I, consideration and action, motion passes. Consideration and action to renew the collection agreement for fines and fees collection services with Lundberger, Gogan, Blair, and Sampson LLP. Rolando.
I placed this item on the agenda. It was time to consider renewing the collection agreement with Linebarger. And John is here, the partner, that is here to answer any questions you may have. But the way it works basically is that when we are delinquent, or when there's failure to appear on some citations, tickets, after a certain period, we hand over those to Linebarger. And they initiate the notification process. They have people, and John can talk about this, they send out mail pieces, they actually have people call. And so what they do essentially is they impose a 30% increase. So they collect that additional 30% increase, they impose on that citation. And they have a huge staff that works on this. So, John, you want to elaborate on these efforts?
I'd be glad to. Thank you, Mayor and members of the commission. Please excuse my casualness. I normally am wearing a coat and tie, but I found out about this meeting this afternoon, so I apologize for that. I mean no disrespect. Like Mr. Bella mentioned, what we get are your delinquent accounts. Those who have refused the officer's directions to show up on a certain date to the court, and those who have refused to show to pay, like they told the court they would. What we have is about a 25% collection rate for you, which is a really good rate. Total resolution rate is a little over 30%. And resolution rate means we've either collected the money that you're owed, or the defendant has come to the court and the court has somehow excused, whatever mitigating circumstances the defendant had. And so that's up to the judge, whatever that. But, they're like Rolando said, Mr. Velo said, we make telephone calls. We call during the day, we call early in the evening, on weekends. We call their home, we call their work. We also have an aggressive mailing campaign to try to get their attention and get them in. You have a lot of traffic that is not necessarily local traffic. You've got traffic from all over the valley, all over the state, and outside Texas. And so that's where we come in. We've got about, I think, the last figure I saw was roughly about 65% of the cases that we have are over 3 years old. So we're getting the stuff that just hasn't been collected. Your local court, your local warrant officer, or your police department can handle, the local stuff. So we're really doing address research and trying to find the defendant. And so we're glad to do that. The 30% that Mr. Velo spoke of, you all actually approved a resolution that adds 30% to everything that you're owed. So the 30% is not coming out of the citation, it's coming out of, it's added to the total citation. And the state legislature has permitted this, has permitted counties and cities to do this because they have a reason they want you to collect. They'll get their money. So they allow cities to recoup the cost of collection. And instead of 30% coming off of your cut, that would penalize the local citizenry. Instead, you're making the defendant, the add-on provision of 30%, you're making the defendant pay for the cost of collection. So really, there's nothing out of your pocket. We're glad to continue doing the business, and with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Duvall. Any questions, John? Did we get this? Yes, Mr. Milano?
Mayor, yes, I've read the contract, I have no issues with the contract, except for provision 7.02. I discussed this with Mr. Guevara earlier in the meeting. 7.02 is an arbitration provision. I generally don't recommend my clients to agree to arbitration, and Mr. Guevara is perfectly willing to delete that. That would be my recommendation to the
Make a motion to approve the collection agreement with the modification from Rick.
Motion on the floor made by Councilman Carter, seconded by Councilman Ballas, to agree to the collection agreement with Linebarger, Gogan, Blair, and Simpson with the deletion of section 7.2.
Mayor Houston?
Yes.
Councilmember Carter?
Yes.
Councilmember Howard?
Yes.
Councilmember Davalos?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Worel?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Goodall.
Thank you.
I'm sorry it took so long.
Oh, that's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item J, consideration action to approve the agreement for the town of Goodall East and the medical director. Mr. Milano?
This is, I put this item on the agenda this time to consider renewing the agreement with Dr. Riva, who's our medical director. State law requires that we have a medical director, and I know the fire chief is here. And the amount of that agreement is $7,000 a year. It's in 4 installments. We actually budgeted that amount. The medical director's responsibility obviously is to work with the first responders. His mother lives here in Laguna Vista, he lives in Los Fresnos, so it's not unusual to see the medical director drop by unexpectedly and check the protocols, check supplies, check the files, the first responders to make sure they're up to date on certifications, because ultimately it's his license that's on the line. He's liable directly to the state, and so he does make it a practice. I know our fire chief is here.
Yep.
He can share some of those comments. So it's a requirement, he's on top of it. Actually, he's part of the training that they also provide to the first responders.
Correct.
And he works very closely with the EMS. He is very impressed with what we have in the community, very impressed with our fire chief, with our first responders, and he just speaks so highly of what is taking place in the community. And this is basically a renewal of that agreement we have with him.
Any questions of Orlando, Chief Leo, Councilman Howard?
I was just gonna make a motion.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Yeah,
I just have
thank
a
you.
question for the chief. And you've been happy with Dr. Uribe, you've worked well with him?
Oh, absolutely. He's very approachable for a new person in the area. He's just come right to me and talked to me face to face, and I haven't had an issue with him yet. Our first aid captain, Robert Travella, they're constantly on the phone 4 or 5 times a week. He gets tired of talking to him once in a while, he really does, but it's all for the good of the order, and he's very knowledgeable, and I trust him 100%.
Thank you.
I'll second.
I'll make a motion to consider an action to approve the agreement between the town of Laguna Vista and the medical director.
No second.
Motion on the floor made by Councilwoman Howard, seconded by Councilman Ballas to reappoint the medical director, Dr. Uribe.
Mayor Houston?
Yes.
Councilmember Carter?
Yes.
Councilmember Howard?
Yes.
Councilmember Davalos?
Yes.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Worel?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Motion passes. Items K, consideration action to authorize the fire chief to sell fire truck engine number 2. Chief?
And I might add that he had approached me as they were repairing fire truck number 1. His idea about fire truck number 2, and I told him, well, let's put it on the agenda and you can explain to the council the situation, and so they can authorize you to move forward on it.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Engine number 2 of the fire company is in bad shape. When I first came down here last year, it was sitting out back of the fire station in the elements, not being driven because the steering pump was bad on it. You still could have left it in the fire station and put a sign on it, do not drive. And it wouldn't have as nearly as much problems as it has now.
sitting the way it is, it's almost $10,000 to repair it. That's just for the stuff that he knows that needs to be repaired. Once we get into the pump, like we did on engine one, sorry, it could cost up to another $9,000 to $12,000 to fix that truck. It's a 2002 truck. It has low miles and low hours on it, but it's in such disarray from sitting outside. It has been weathered, it has dry rotted seals in it. The truck is so under-equipped, it's not even funny. We use it for a taxi basically right now. We can pump with it, but we really don't want to push it to where I got somebody in a fire and the pump breaks. I couldn't live with it. So we're basically using it. It is the secondary